Yeah. Although honestly, it does, like I do have kind of a speech prepared. The way I usually do it is I lie awake at night and then I get an idea. And the idea that came to me last night was Richard Nixon, who said of Timothy Leary that he was the most dangerous man in America. And it was under Richard Nixon that Congress, I believe it was in 1970, passed the Controlled Substances Act, which outlawed basically all psychedelics. All of them that they could think of, and then they kept adding more as soon as they thought of them. And in a way, Nixon was right. Leary was the most dangerous man in America, but not. So now it's weird, like it seems like some big part of the psychedelic movement now agrees with Richard Nixon and was like, yeah, he made it too popular too quickly and people used it irresponsibly and we have to make sure now that they use it responsibly, which usually means that we're going to be in charge of how they use it. So there's some spirit of the democratization of psychedelics that protests against all of the, not only the scheduling of these, but also the medicalization and corporatization of psychedelics. So when Nixon said that Leary was the most dangerous man in America, I think he was right in a different sense, which is that what he was offering was a complete dissolution of society as we knew it. Like when they said this will, if we allow LSD to remain legal, it'll be the end of society as we know it, they were kind of right. And that is indeed a terrible thing if you believe that society as you know it is the ideal society, or at least that we're fundamentally moving in the right direction. It was a lot easier to believe in 1970 that we were fundamentally moving in the right direction. Because after all, look at the wonders of modern technology, look at the progress. Life is getting better with each generation. New diseases are being conquered. All of the great killers have succumbed to the tools of modern science. And in 10 short years, we'll have colonies in space. In 20 years, we'll have, artificial life. In 30 years, we'll have infinite lifespans. I mean, there was this triumphalist story was very strong, and so because psychedelics so deeply challenged the fundamental rightness of society and its delimiting concepts and paradigms about who you are, what a human being is, and what is real, it made sense to make them illegal. But today, it's become quite obvious that progress is a myth, that we are not getting happier and happier with each passing generation, and in some ways, maybe the opposite, more and more separate. Just having a conversation right before this with Brooke, who does end-of-life work with people, and she was speaking of like these incredible minds, professors of mythology at Harvard, these people who had tremendous accomplishments in their lives, all dying alone. And that accumulated wisdom not getting transmitted through like the personal transmission that happens between intimates to the next generation. I mean, maybe it's in their books and stuff, but old people dying alone is just one tiny aspect of what I call the age of separation. So the growing awareness that we're not fundamentally on the right track opens us a little bit more to the end of society as we know it, and to technologies, including psychedelic technologies, that, as Richard Nixon suspected, could actually cause a tremendous change in our society. And so that's as we awaken to that, we start to look again at the laws, the regulatory apparatus that has suppressed psychedelics for the last 50 years. And so, as Christina mentioned, I am through a pretty amazing series of synchronicities. I've ended up as an advisor to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his presidential campaign. And I don't know, like right now my official title is Director of Policy, but I don't really feel like I fit in that, for one thing, because I have some profound disagreements with him on various policies, but also, like, I don't feel like I'm the director of anything, you know? Like, it just doesn't come naturally to me. I'm just, you know, maybe, anyway, though I do advise on policy and other things, and one of those is psychedelic policy. So in that regard, I am, and I just asked him last night, okay, I'm gonna say this, is that okay? You know, this is what you want, right? And what it was is the descheduling of all psychedelics from the Controlled Substances Act. They will all be, under a Kennedy presidency, they will all be removed from Schedule 1, which, and there are two reasons why. Well, I could probably make up more reasons, but two basic justifications for removing them from Schedule 1. And the first is obvious to anybody here who has listened to some of the other speakers, you know, because Schedule 1 says that they have no medical use and a high potential for abuse. And it is abundantly obvious that the first clause of that stricture is completely false. They have tremendous therapeutic uses and psychological, neurological, on many levels. And this was actually known already in the 60s. There was already research going on. Stan Groff, research at Harvard. There was all kinds of research already going on that demonstrated the utility of psychedelics in, for example, quitting alcohol. In fact, I was just speaking yesterday with Robert Fort, who's some of you may know, he's a longtime thought leader in the psychedelic world, speaking of how Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, was profoundly affected by LSD. And a lot of the insights that formed AA came from his psychedelic experiences. So the medical uses of psychedelics are so well established that there's simply no legitimate basis to schedule them. And all it takes is a politician, a leader with some courage to direct. It takes, you know, this is an executive branch, the DEA is in the executive branch. You don't even need an act of Congress to remove these from Schedule 1, as far as I know. Could be wrong, but I think that's true. But there's another, so aside from the practical and urgent uses of psychedelics today that disqualify them from Schedule 1, there's a second reason. Excuse me. Yeah, it's not going to help. This is just a morning thing. There's a second reason why I think it's important, why they don't belong. And this goes beyond actually, okay, we'll take them off Schedule 1 and we'll create other regulations for them because they do have a high potential for abuse. And this kind of leads down the road to the medicalization and therefore the corporatization of psychedelics. imposing some kind of control on them, contrary to the spirit of Timothy Leary. And I can understand the reasons why, because our society, our people, so deeply lost in the territory of separation, so disconnected from the indigenous traditions for administering these sacraments that created context, that created ways to integrate it, that included a world story that was consistent with the psychedelic experience. We have none of that. And so, yeah, like some people will have a psychotic break, you know, some people will get victimized by unscrupulous practitioners. Some people will get addicted to the psychedelic experience because they never fully integrate it. And so they keep coming back again and again for more. Like most of us in this world have seen all of these things happen. And so, okay, we better have certifications and you know, some kind of medicalized, legitimate system to dole them out in approved settings. And I don't know if I'm the only one here that feels a little uncomfortable with that. And this goes to the other reason why psychedelics do not belong on Schedule 1, which is, I would even call it a constitutional issue, freedom of religion. These medicines are sacraments. They're not just medicines in the pharmacological sense of the word. They are tools. I mean, if anything is religious, it's got to be to open a portal to God. It's got to be to explore the fundamentals of who you are. It's got to be to apprehend the grandeur of the universe. I mean, if these are not religious endeavors, then what is? Freedom of religion has, you know, originally it was a pretty radical concept. It meant the freedom to live according to the teachings of your religion. It didn't mean only that you can go into church on Sunday and say whatever prayers you want, as long as it's contained in the church. It didn't mean that you can worship whatever image of God that you want, as long as it's within the confines of the church. It meant that you can, that because religion, properly understood, is not a separate category from the rest of life. And the sacred is not a separate category from the material. And in fact, that is one of the teachings of psychedelics, at least in my experience, of the unity of spirit and matter, of the spiritual nature of matter, it's helped me to understand that the qualities of sacredness and consciousness that we've exported onto the spiritual world are actually in matter also. So the bridging of the spirit-matter divide that psychedelics can help with also says that these are religious sacraments, and that, as it says in the Constitution, Congress shall make no law. What is it actually? I should have prepared this of the establishment of a religion. I can't remember exactly the phrasing, but something along those lines, as you know. And so this is a much more radical step than merely descheduling psychedelics from Schedule 1 and replacing that with a regulatory framework. It names as a fundamental right, a fundamental freedom, the exploration of your consciousness and of God. And as far as my influence extends, you know, people keep asking me, what, you know, is Kennedy, can he actually get elected? think he's going to win, actually. I mean, he's running against two very weak, flawed candidates. I mean, you know, if this is not the moment, then what is the moment? And like sometimes when I have a disagreement with him on some, you know, something important, not just minor disagreements, and I kind of want to run out of there, you know, I'm like, okay, who else on the political horizon is anywhere close, you know? So anyway, that's just a little aside, but to say that to the extent of my influence, the constitutional freedom of religion argument for the decriminalization of psychedelics will be very prominent. And that brings up some issues that we need to look at, actually, as a movement. Because, you know, again, going back to the Timothy Leary debate and the democratization of psychedelics in a society that does not have the traditions, that does not have the mythological context for them, that is not prepared in so many ways, that is so deeply traumatized, so deeply separated, so deeply alienated and cut off, that just, you know, going into your own, you know, backyard and self-administering is not ideal. Although, honestly, I think it's a lot better than nothing, you know? And a lot of people have had profound, life-changing experiences, even without a skilled sitter, without proper set and setting, without, you know, any of the safety precautions they still have. I mean, that happened to me, you know? My psychedelic awakening happened on a friend gave me a couple tabs of acid, you know, and there I was on a beach in Taiwan. And, you know, okay, here, eat these, okay, you know? And next thing you know, like, I'm in an experience that I still haven't integrated. 40 years later, almost, 35 years later. And do we really want to deny that to people? And what is the math that says that some, you know, minority, 1%, 0.5% having a damaging experience isn't worth that? You know, you look at initiatory rituals in traditional cultures. Not everybody makes it. You know, it's not just that they have a traumatic experience; they die sometimes. I recently reread Malidoma Some's Of Water and Spirit, where he and 70 or 80 other young men go through this initiation. 2 of them died in the initiation. Or like the Iboga initiations in Gabon, you know, like they give you, for the shamanic initiation anyway, one of my friends was telling me that they give, like, you know how, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Iboga, it's kind of my main medicine, actually. You know, you take like, you know, like a couple mouthfuls of root bark, you know, maybe some capsules. Like they give you like a water bottle, like full of like, you know, intense tea, you know, and you drink as much as you can, and then if you can't finally get any more down, they actually stuff it up your butt for the shamanic initiation, and then like you're out for a week, you know, and no one's taking care of you really, and some people don't make it. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm not prescribing that for our society right now, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just wanting to question the arithmetic that we use and the worship of safety that is actually about control and limits, because it is never safe, ultimately, to truly explore your boundaries. Because who you have been is threatened. And therefore, in some sense, we can never make psychedelics completely safe. We are we're doing something real here. We are playing with these are real medicines. So it does, though, bring up the question of this is the question on the other side of the corporatization conversation. A lot of people are disturbed by the corporatization of psychedelics and all of the control structures that grow up around that medicalization and corporatization. But we also can recognize that even if it's better than nothing for everybody to do it on their own like they did in the 60s with no context and no lineage, et cetera, it's not as good as having robust structures that can hold and context and integrate the psychedelic experience. And what are those going to be? The default is commerce. The default is money. The default is corporatization. What is on the other side of that? What other kinds of structures can we build that can provide the integration and, if not safety, at least a relevant container that can actually maximize and sustain as the psychedelic experience and put those medicines to their full use? And that's really the question we should be asking. It's really, how do we serve the medicine? How do we enter into service to the function that the medicine actually wants to exert in this world? And I say that not as a figurative way of speaking. When I say, what does the medicine want? That's actually a valid orientation that becomes apparent to many people, many of us, when we enter into the psychedelic space and we apprehend the medicine as a being that has a personality. And then we can ask, what does it want? And the person serving medicine, the practitioner who always holds that in his or her consciousness and stands behind the medicine rather than standing in front of it, that serves the medicine rather than using it as a tool for financial or egotistical gain, that person will deliver the most beautiful experiences. And I don't want to make this too either or and say that you have to be absolutely pure in order to serve medicine, but to be aware of these other motivations and to ask, why am I really doing this? And then to expand that question to the systemic level, to the level of regulations and laws and corporate structures, to always keep a lifeline. Why am I doing this? Because, there are a fair number of pretty psychopathic individuals out there who are serving medicine and using medicine to control people. I've seen a little bit of it, heard some pretty bad stories. But does that mean that we turn this over to the government, as we have so many other functions? In a way, though, 3 minutes left, yeah. In a way, thanks. In a way, the legalization of things, the handing over of authority to, say, credentialing bodies, to the American Medical Association, if you're going to go into that realm, that is a symptom of a deeper kind of unraveling, where a function that had been once served by community, as community dissolves under the impact of free market capitalism and technology, that community function of word of mouth, of reputation, gets replaced by credentialing and oversight bodies. You live in a city of 5 million people, or you're new to town, you don't really know anybody, you get sick, you have to go to a doctor. How do you know that this is a good doctor? If you lived in a small town, a traditional small town or village, everybody knew who the good doctor was and who to stay away from. You knew it was a community function. And now society is so atomized that that word of mouth function it's not absent, but it's really been diluted. And we have the same as psychedelics turns into more and more of a mass phenomenon. We have kind of the same thing, where new people are entering into it. They heard about it somewhere, they read about it somewhere, someone told them about it, and yeah, I want to experience that. That discontent with not just society as we know it, but reality as I know it, and me as I know me, is begging people to challenge those boundaries, to do something a little unsafe. And that makes them vulnerable. And when there's no tribal structure, when there's no community of practice, where there's no socially systematized word of mouth, then how do they know? How are they going to be protected by the most rapacious and manipulative people out there? And I'm raising this as an important question that we must address if we are going to pursue any alternative to corporatization and to legal structures that can be very constricting and that could actually eliminate the best practitioners who maybe never, take the licensing exam and are trained in a very different tradition, or who are called to it in some way and would seem to be totally unqualified, except they're some of the best people out there because the medicine gave them permission and they're not making it up and they're being honest with themselves. How do you know that? Except through the experience of other people and communities of experience that share with each other. Yeah, let's do that.
Anyone have a question? One of the next... Go find her. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you for your talk this morning. One of the things that you brought up there, I love the quote, "Congress shall make no laws," period. And when we look at the scheduling system, it just seems so asinine. It doesn't make a lot of sense at all when it comes to real human care. Some of the drugs that are Schedule I, as we all know, it doesn't make any logic or sense. So I don't put a lot of merit into that scheduling system. And you talked a little bit about the people and the practitioners that already have frameworks and foundations for serving these medicines safely and effectively. How do we protect ourselves from our own government, I guess is the question. That we can freely use these plants in safe settings with people that have decade-long traditions and not feel threatened by any type of law enforcement or, how do we protect the people that are doing this now, and how do we protect the underground? Because I think the underground, for the most part, has it pretty much figured out. I know there are inherent safety issues and there are some bad actors, but that's throughout everything, including traditional medicine. So I just want to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, right. The traditional licensing system doesn't even really work anyway. There's just as many horrific medical doctors, who are fully credentialed and licensed as there are. Probably the proportion is the same. But as for how do you protect yourself from, this is what democracy is about. It's not, we can't just sit around and hope that the corrupt powers that dominate government today are going to relent and give us our freedom back. That's why I got involved in this campaign. Because I'm like, if not Kennedy, then what am I waiting for? And am I just going to sit around hoping that we're going to get, somebody from within the political machine who's going to relent? I don't think so. So it's not about protecting ourselves from the government, but it's about actually manifesting democracy and reclaiming the government. And until that happens, yeah, keep it sacred, keep it secret, keep it underground, and create bubbles of an alternate reality that serve as the template, that serve as the seed crystal for when it becomes mainstream. Like, you know, prefigurative practice, you could call it.